Um, cool, yeah. So this is week 5's content, which is technology, or the technology for media startups. Basically, what I'll take you through is my recommended tech stack for the kind of startups that you guys should be running for a subject like this, and you'll take elements from it depending on what you need to achieve, depending on your startup. So some of these will be more relevant for your ideas than others, but a lot of these technology solutions, and it's basically just a list where I go through and I'll give you an understanding of each one, what it does, where it fits into the mix. A lot of these are, tools come and go. A lot of these are more persistent than others, and I've tried to find ones that are generally free or have a free tier that you can utilize to give you an understanding of your business. Cool, so they're distributed across these broad areas, and then I'll go through briefly sort of the raw bones of digital content as well. So everything that I'm talking about basically are the tools that help you execute the back end. So the back end of your business model canvas. So when you're actually doing your key activities or the key resources and pulling them together, and then potential key partners that you'd have to run your business, and then how you actually take your content or your proposition to market via your channels is what you do with these tools. None of them are going to give you your value proposition. None of them are going to create the content that you need to create, and deliver it to your customers. They're not going to give you or define your revenue stream or revenue streams. And they're certainly not going to define your customer relationships that you want to build, but they'll facilitate all of those things. So I've split them up across when you create content or source content, publishing and publishing tools, distribution of content out to different platforms, and then how you monetize that, and then just some general admin and management tools as well. And they have a very American sort of, English focus, so apologies about that. I'm sure there's a plethora of those in other markets that are not English speaking as well. Like Xero, for example, is an accounting platform that I recommend. There are probably 100 other ones all over the world that serve the Asian markets or the South American markets, that sort of thing. So just keep that's the filter I'm putting over it, just so you're aware. Cool. How many of you guys have done a little bit of coding or know much about HTML and coding at all? A little bit? So what level, what sort of stuff were you doing?
Pretty basic. I studied the master's in IT, then I changed, but I had to do programming foundation.
Okay, cool. So how many of you are interested in that at all? Or have ever considered it? Yeah, a few. So if you are interested, I can give you some recommendations on how to start learning. I think it's a really good idea if you want to be a journalist today to have those skills, just because you're distributing content online, and digital content is basically communicated through HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and some back-end languages. It's definitely the wrong thing to do if you're trying to run a startup. So you shouldn't be trying to learn to code and running a startup, because you can't do both of those things at once. If it's essential for you to know how to be like a technical person and run a startup, you should learn to be technical and then run your startup, because you shouldn't waste time not validating your ideas by trying to learn, new skills like that. So I've got this, I usually use this example. So basically the raw bones of digital content are split across these four areas. HTML, which is one of the oldest languages, ridiculously old, came in with the internet. CSS, which is an offshoot of HTML. JavaScript, which is basically, so the top one is content. CSS is the style, so the way that content is represented. JavaScript basically enables you to change that content for a user and interact with the user. And then everything after that, of which there's potentially thousands, but in general probably no more than 100 strong back-end languages, basically handle data. So they push content to different destinations, interact with databases, that sort of thing. I'll use this example here. So this is someone who's put a sort of an actual print version of the Guardian together. So like the front page of The Guardian in HTML and CSS. The reason why I like this is as soon as you just remove the styling, this is essentially what you get. So it's all the content. So and that's just the HTML that's left. So articles, ads, etc., etc. And then if I add all of that back in, it automatically renders that content visually the way that we want. So that's the distinction, just so you know. If you're interested in learning this, you should start by learning HTML, which is the easiest, then learn CSS and styling, then learn JavaScript, and then if you want to keep going, go and learn back-end languages. The reason why it's important is because if you have those skills, you can put together more interesting stories online. So if you've got basic, HTML and CSS and JavaScript skills, you can do interesting things with data, like data visualizations. You can troubleshoot your own content when you try and push it online and you're like, oh, why isn't it represented in this way? Like, why isn't that video larger or smaller or this right aspect? If you know all of that stuff, you can then just go in and troubleshoot that yourself. It gives you a lot more flexibility and agility if you're trying to run your own business as well, than having to rely on other people and generally pay other people. The largest cost item in both of the startups that I ran was development, so hiring coders. If you can ameliorate any of that cost, it will give you more runway, more life, a longer amount of time to figure out whether your business is viable or not. So they're really valuable skills to have. In addition, if you're working in a digital newsroom, obviously you'd have higher value in the eyes of potentially your employer, in my opinion. Oops. If anyone's interested in learning, there's pretty good free tools on Lynda. Some like free training tutorials on here that are reasonable, and you can dive into those. There's a whole stack of other ones out there. If you're interested, hit me up on Slack and I'll give you some recommendations if you want to start learning that sort of stuff. Cool. So that's the raw bones, the basics. Next, content. So I'll take you through each of these. About where you source, curate. Sorry, I'm gonna be flying around different screens during this session. Cool. I might show you. How many of you guys have used content planning tools in the past? Like for any kind of content work that you've ever done? Yeah? What did you use?
Mostly Social Sprout.
Social Sprout. Okay, yeah, cool. And it's for social media primarily. Cool. Alright, so these ones that I'll show you, so I've put all of those, which are really valuable, those social distribution management apps, I put them all into the distribution section. And what I'm going to show you here is where you source content that's original content that you might produce, or understand trends and the kinds of trends around the content you should be producing. So the first one I'll show you is Spike by a company called NewsWhip. This isn't free, but they have a really, really generous free trial, which you can basically get away with sort of churning over and over and over for a fair amount of time, which I have done before. And basically this is like Google Trends, which I'll show you in a second, on steroids. It's specifically designed for newsrooms and PR and content people. And it basically gives you an understanding of trending content, what content's about to become viral content across a range of different sources. So they let you track, so online content, so digital content by Google, social content, then sources like Reddit as well, and then they'll give you the capacity to deep dive into different topics. So it's really valuable if you have if you've got a content startup that's specifically around, like I did around sport. I was able to set up specific searches around different parts of the world, different topics within sport, and then I could track emerging content across different social networks to understand how that content was basically being being distributed. So as I could see a piece of content that was basically about to do that or going like that, going viral, I could jump on it and then repost it and then basically jump onto that wave. So a lot of the work that we were doing, me and the content guys that we were working with, was basically we're producing some original content, but probably not as much as we should have been. And a lot of the content we were producing was basically hunting for relevant stories, topical to our audience, and then jumping on those every day. So we were like jumping and hunting the daily kind of churn of news, which, an outfit like BuzzFeed is famous for that. That's basically their bread and butter. So this is a really good, if I can find you an actual example. Yeah, there we go. So you can see the way that they track social data and other platforms to try and understand how content's being shared and distributed. It's a pretty unique product. There are other products that do this, but not as well. Cool. What's next? A more basic version of that is actual Google Trends. Do you guys use Google Trends? Yeah, a couple of nods. All right, cool. I won't labor on this one then. What I love is the fact that the top things are basically Game of Thrones. You guys are Game of Thrones fans? It was released today. So you can then explore this search query and this search term. This is good, not as good as NewsWhip, but at least it gives you a sense of different things in different markets particularly. So if you're trying to take news from one market and redistribute it to another, or you're trying to look for viral content that hasn't been discovered in this market yet, a lot of the Australian news outlets will do that. They'll just go and grab video content and other content from different markets and distribute it out as part of their content strategy.
I thought Taylor Swift was going to be in that. Like, I thought like maybe Taylor Swift was going to be like the top topic for today.
I beg your pardon?
Sorry, I just thought that maybe Taylor Swift, she was going to be like in the list as in the trend.
Seems like Taylor Swift is always in this list whenever I come to this. Katy Perry, Taylor Swift, Nicki Minaj. Here we go. Sorry, no idea. That's quite funny. That's Google Trend. What about Google Keyword Planner? Have you guys used that? So that's like the next level down. So it looks like this. So Google Keyword Planner is essentially you have to sign up for what's called an AdWords account, and that's essentially where Google enables you to buy ads via search terms. But on the flip side, it also gives you a free tool to profile how people are searching over a longer period of time. So basically, they want to give advertisers, like, if I want to advertise, I don't know, online free courses or content marketing, whatever it is, then I can go and plug those search terms in here, and it will give me an understanding of, right, search weight behind each term. So how many people are searching behind that? What other related keyword searches they're doing. So it's specifically designed for advertisers, but it's really helpful if you can't afford like high-end newsroom style kind of SEO tools. You can use this as a hack to get yourself there. Like, it's a pretty hacky way to do it. Ideally, you'd have something like what The Guardian has. They have their own kind of tool for SEO optimization and SEO search around content called Orphan, I believe. But this is, almost as good, and it's free. So essentially, just go and sign up for AdWords. You don't have to spend any money to actually use it. And then you can plug in a search term, just chuck in your landing page. I can put in, say, newsroom. They're a news outlet. Say arts and entertainment. I'm searching for Game of Thrones. You can refine by location, but generally you don't get as much data and then you can restrict it to this month, or you can break it out and make it longer. So for example, if your startup is around specific areas of say environmental science or whatever it is, like whatever the suite of topics you might cover, like your categories, you can track them as alerts, and then it will give you search weight behind each of those categories and related things, so that you can, when you actually go and search for that, it can inform the kind of content you should be creating. So for example, this is average monthly searches across all of these recommended ideas. Wow, that's enormous. I didn't realize it was so high. So there's 1 million to 10 million searches behind Game of Thrones every month. Average monthly searches for that period of time. Ignore all this stuff because it's advertising stuff. I'll get into that later in the course. But this is where it actually gets interesting. That's in there because I was searching for some other stuff. But if you look at the Game of Thrones related topics, so if I was an entertainment journalist and I was producing some entertainment content, every time there's an episode of Game of Thrones is released, they release a bunch of stuff, like reviews of the episode, whatever, all the fan themes, whatever it is. You could go in here and basically say, all right, well, apart from the watch Game of Thrones online for free ones, so Game of Thrones characters, so that's a relatively high search weight, so there's 100,000 to 1 million searches for that every month. So you might say, all right, well, I want to create a piece of content around the top 5 Game of Thrones characters and why, or the top Game of Thrones characters who are going to kill each other or have killed each other, whatever it is. But you want to try and get those search terms into the content that you're creating in order to capture some of that search weight. So it's pretty basic kind of content strategy. Whatever the topic is, you can use this to get an understanding of, all right, what's the weight of interest in this topic? If there is a weight of interest, what are the related terms? And how can I try and optimize my content to the way that people are searching for it? Do you guys want to try something related to your startups? Anybody?
Influencer.
So influencer what? So what's because you were putting together a community management kind of.
I changed it today.
Oh, you changed it?
Yeah.
So what is it now?
It's kind of like an influencer agency.
Okay, cool. So there'll be a lot for that. If I put in Tribe and say influencer, they'll probably be mixed up with my previous searches, so sorry about that. What is that? Alright, so if you look down across that, so because it doesn't really matter for you, so the competition basically means there's lots of people bidding on that term. For you guys, it doesn't really matter because you're actually creating content around it. So you probably want to actually go and do a search. If you basically find, say, 10 or 20 search queries for each category that you might be creating content under, or Maria, for your specific idea, like obviously it's the whole business idea, so you'd probably have a content strategy related to, the funnel around getting into influencer marketing, and what are the stages and what are the areas of people trying to understand it, and what are the pain points, how they're going to get over it. Once you've got that mapped out, you can basically say, all right, well, I've got my 10 to 20 keywords. Go and do each of those searches and you'll see the content that appears to get an understanding of the kinds of content you need to create. That's really going into the content marketing space as opposed to the news space, but it's works exactly the same way. There are, if you're interested in doing this more for marketing purposes, there's a platform called Moz, or a company called Moz, and they produce probably the best SEO, performance, keyword planning, all those tools. And then another one called SEMrush. So if you're doing search engine marketing, SEO optimization, that's quite good as well. Cool. What's next? On this list, another one, Scripted is a third-party community of people creating content, you guys could sign up and create content in there if you wanted to get into that space. It's really good if you're doing content marketing work as opposed to news sourcing. Contently is similar, but it's a bit more expensive. Venngage and Canva. Have you guys used Canva before? Yeah. Okay. Cool. For those of you who don't know about it, it's basically design made simple. Super easy way to get all of your design work done. So you never have to hire a designer if you use Canva. I recommend using it. It's super cheap. Well, it's actually free most of the time. They have a premium version. Venngage is really cool as well if you're into data visualizations and you want infographics, those sorts of things. I've used it quite a lot just to embed different infographics in stories. This is there. If you do want to start doing basic design stuff, so for different stories, if you want to design interesting headers, or if you have embedded content that you want to actually design, Sketch is a really good tool. Not as expensive as Photoshop, way easier to learn. It's like using PowerPoint but design, but you can still create quite fully spec'd designs, websites, whatever you want to create with it. I recommend checking it out. There's really good resources online. For example, I think I was showing you guys this last week. Like this is a full website that's been designed within Sketch, and it's only, I think there's student discounts you can get as part of it. I think it's about $99 or maybe cheaper. And there's a free trial as well you can make use of. Just turn the layout off. So it's good for anything from banners, optimizing images, that sort of stuff, to just doing full designs for customers, if that's something you need to do. Now, for other content sources, so there's Getty Images, which you guys would probably know about. AAP, which I've mentioned before, is an Australian content provider and large employer of journalists. Getty Images is good because they own basically they own every other kind of supplier of images and other content. They own iStock, they own basically everybody. But then they also do news content as well. So they're a massive provider. So if you do need to get a couple of images, like you can just go on and purchase them if you need to, as part of your MVP if you wanted to do that. Otherwise, if you're looking for generic stock content for making your sites look good, or Canva style infographics and things for social media, then Unsplash is really good. It's totally free. Have you guys heard of this before? Yeah? A couple of nods. I use it all the time. It's like an expanding kind of community of photographers, which is really cool. And you can just go on and grab content for a range of different topics. It's hyper Americans, like American frat kind of hipster. So if you search for bridge, there's like 200 photos of the San Francisco Bridge and no other bridges, which is pretty hilarious. But really good resource. Cool. All right, so that's my content roundup. The next one's publishing. So I know it's really obvious, but I would like to talk about WordPress for a while. How many of you guys have used WordPress? Hopefully, mostly everyone. Cool. So the reason why I mention it is because you can't really get away. You can't really fault its like power and its price. So it's just the most widely used publishing platform basically on the internet, at least in the English-speaking internet. And for most of the things that you want to do as a publisher or as an entrepreneurial journalist can be achieved for free using WordPress. If you're using WordPress for your MVP, just to make the distinction between WordPress.com and WordPress.org, WordPress.com is basically the commercial side of that company, and it's more controlled. So if you just want to click and go simpler version of WordPress, then use this, but you won't get as much power within the platform. If you aren't that confident trying to get a website up and going that would enable you to run a publishing venture, then I'd recommend using this, or one of the other ones that I'll get onto in a second. If you're a bit more confident and you want a bit more power, then go with WordPress.org. So many publishing houses use WordPress, and this is the version that they use. It's the open source free one. You actually download the package and then you have to install it via your hosting provider or whoever you're using, whether it's Google Cloud or someone like that. So the reason why this is better is because it's more extensible. There's more plugins that are available, and some of the plugins I'll then go on and talk about are only available in here. And it just gives you more control over the look and feel, the design, etc. It's still all free, so there's no real price. There is a paid tier of WordPress, but only large enterprise uses it. Large enterprises use it, like Vox.com or News Corp and those guys. Everyone else basically just uses the free version. So we use WordPress for our marketing site. This marketing site. So I'm a real fan of it, even though there's lots of other platforms out there. If you are going to use it, a key plugin to use is Yoast SEO. If you guys use that, it's a free SEO plugin, and it will give you an understanding of the performance of your content as you're publishing it. So you should definitely use that, and it's totally free to use. I'll go in there and I'll show you the URL, Yoast. This one. Cool. Another publishing platform that's showing promise is one called Ghost. This basically emerged after one of the lead developers within the WordPress community basically said WordPress is becoming more like a Frankenstein of a website product, and he wanted to go back to producing a piece of software that's designed specifically for content and publishing. So he created Ghost and got together with a bunch of other people. It's still an open source product, but they do have templates that you can buy, and it's specifically designed for publishing, as you can see. And they're slowly getting more and more brands and media companies on the platform to produce content. It's a wholly owned platform, so you can take it and put it on your website. It's not like Medium, where it's actually controlled by them. I'll just show you some of the features. I'd recommend checking it out if you're running specifically or you want to run a specific media startup and you don't want to do other things. So whereas WordPress is really good if you run a media startup that also wants to do e-commerce, or you run a media startup that also wants to do agency services or something else. Whereas this is really good for just doing publishing. And they're very single-minded about it. And it has a really good writing interface. And they use they have integrated some of the more leading publishing changes in digital content, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And they're constantly updating the platform, so I'd recommend checking it out. I've run a couple of blogs on this, so they got accelerated mobile pages, which is really good. And it doesn't have any of the junk. Basically, you don't have to fight your way against the interface as you do with WordPress. Like, it's not hard to use. It's actually really easy. I won't go through all of that, but I'll show you some of the themes you can get your hands on. Also, actually, they're running if anyone's enterprising, they're actually running a journalism development program as part of it. They've got some cash to put into online news. Where are the themes? There we go, marketplace. Cool. So there's a bunch of like publishing style news templates, all using imagery from Unsplash. And they're relatively inexpensive. Cool. Do you guys use any other platforms? Have you used any other platforms for different things that you've done? Another one that's out there if you're interested, which is Squarespace. This is better for small business owners like creatives, agencies, anyone doing like really basic e-commerce. Check this out. You can do publishing with it. It's not amazing. It's still pretty good though. There's no free tier, so it's actually a paid product, but they really try hard to put a lot of effort into their design. So essentially when you spin up a website, it's really good for MVPs because you spin up a website and it generally looks like $1 million just straight off the bat, which is pretty nice. So you don't have to faff about with design stuff if you're just trying to get something going. They do really cheap landing pages if you want to do landing pages as well, just to test out an idea. Yeah, and then they let you sell a certain number of products. And it's not really great for e-commerce, like enterprise level, but it's good enough. Cool. So those are the platforms where you actually create an own channel, if that's part of your strategy. The next ones I'll show you are JW Player, Scribble Live, Brightcove. These are all plugins or platforms that enable you to do different things with content. So Scribble Live is like a live blogging platform with content, social content and a bunch of other stuff. I'll go through them one by one. JW Player is basically a good monetization option for video content. So if you're producing lots of video content or that's part of your strategy, then I'd recommend checking out JW Player. You'll probably need a technical person to help you implement it, but it's actually pretty reasonable given that you can sign up, there's a free tier as well. And there's a way for you to monetize your video content out of the box, which is really handy. As opposed to something more enterprise like Brightcove. This is the platform that Fairfax, News Corp, a lot of big, so you can see their timing, all of these big Convox, all these big companies use to distribute and monetize video. It has like more enterprise bones around it. So when you'd step from distributing your video content via free platforms like YouTube and Vimeo where you don't actually control it, stepping into something like JW Player where you get a bit more flexibility and you can actually monetize it via advertising, and then up into something like Brightcove. So we integrate in our startup straight into Brightcove because we're targeting media startups. And then Scribble Live, if you want to do any live coverage, live blogging, that sort of stuff, this is a really good product. There are a couple of different free equivalents out there. This is probably the best one, and a lot of newsrooms use it. I think the ABC is still using it for all of their live blogging work. So you've probably seen it online. I might skip over Wistia. Kamiak. This is a really cool tool for if you're trying to organize a range of content creators. So a lot of the time, people like yourselves, if you're running a content startup, you'll be managing a stack of people who don't work for you, who need to create content, who are just freelancers or something, and you need to organize those people in one place. And Kamiak is a tool designed for that. It's relatively cheap, and it gives you a desk, and you can run assignments through there. You can integrate into Getty Images, do a range of different things, and it's designed for managing the flow of content for a newsroom or a content startup. If you're using WordPress, there are a few different plugins you can use that basically do this as well. Some of them are free, some of them are paid. So check that out. If you want to go the full way, I'd recommend checking this out. And I'll give a plug to my own brand. Mainly because I'll mention this now. So what we do, Cognitive does, or I'll show you my actual blog so you can actually see some of it, is we try to wrap up a bunch of those different things that I've just talked about. So different elements of that, like video hosting, the platform for publishing, so like Brightcove, WordPress, some analytics tools, workflows like Kamiak, and we put it all together into one product. If you're interested in using Cognitives, I'd be happy to give you guys, as part of the course, like a free use of it if you want to try it. This is our content marketing publishing venture here, running on our platform. And then I'll show you the back end. So it's like editing content, creating articles, all of that sort of stuff, distributing content out to different locations, amplifying that content with social, all of that sort of stuff. We then have like team workflow tools and collaboration tools, etc. to help you manage your contributors. You can curate content from social media, which is sort of like that Scribble Live tool that I just showed you. So you can pull in stuff from hashtags and that sort of thing into something that looks like this. So you can pull in content from different sources and post it. So whether that's, we use it, in this instance, we're using it for content marketing, for in the context of a newsroom, they might be tracking, trending hashtags around stories and pulling that content into a specific page. And then we also have an analytics engine that tracks engaged users and content, like engagement with your content over time. So I'll stop talking about that now. If any of you are interested in using it, hit me up on Slack or send me an email. So that's my general roundup of publishing tools. Do you guys have any questions about those? No? All right, I'll keep going. Distribution. So this is where, as we were talking about earlier, distributing your content out to different locations. I might just start a new window. Alright, so in this list, Buffer. Have you guys heard of Buffer? Yeah. And check up Sprout Social if you like. You can tell us about it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So this is my favorite, either really cheap, I think there's a free tier on this still. TweetDeck is, I think, owned by Twitter, which is nice. So specifically, this is I just have to log in. Yeah, there we go. This is specifically for scheduling and distributing content out to all of these different social channels. So it's pretty basic. It's super handy, really easy to integrate into different platforms you use. It's a really basic tool. So you can sync up different accounts and then just connect to a range of others, including, I won't talk about it in detail. I've listed it here in distribution, so Facebook groups and pages and all that sort of stuff. And then every other platform has their equivalent of those. So however you want to distribute and create an audience and organize people who are interested in what the content you're creating, usually you can find a tool like this that will schedule distribution and management of that community in some way. So that's the whole purpose of them, is to basically just simplify your workflow and hopefully automate as much as possible. TweetDeck does that pretty well, specifically for Twitter. So you can curate a range of hashtags and also different handles you might be running into one place. So say you've got a media startup and you cover a range of different topics and you want to create a range of Twitter accounts to cover all of that content, or all of that in terms of managing the feedback you get about content, creating a community around that content, tracking trending content for those different topics, and then posting all that content out. And you can do that via TweetDeck relatively easily. Most of the journalists that I've met who work in digital content have used this tool in some way as part of their workflow. So I'd recommend using it. Have any of you guys used it before? It's nice because you can just keep adding kind of channels and you can then stream through the content on those channels. So this is very basic activity on my personal account, which is doesn't get any love at all. Notifications, and then I can just add in new columns. So search queries around specific topics. If I've got a list of particular influencers around topics that I follow, I can add those lists in here, so it's really easy to consume all of the content. Mentions, followers that I have, any scheduled posts that I have to go out, etc. So what does Sprout Social actually do?
Pardon?
What does this actually do?
It does Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's what it did when I was working with that. I don't know if they have added something else. Oh, they added Google Analytics now.
Okay. And is it analytics basically?
It's analytics, but it also allows you to program like all the publications from there for both. For Instagram, Twitter, whatever the social media is that you're using. I found it less messy than TweetDeck. We used to use TweetDeck, but it wasn't like really my thing. I found it like a little bit messy, and it was not as organized as I like to work. So Social Sprout is quite easy to use. I used it a little bit Hootsuite as well. They're pretty similar if you can understand Hootsuite. You can definitely use Social Sprout. I think the big difference is that Hootsuite came first, so it became popular quite fast, and then Social Sprout is like slowly growing. That's popular, which is quite useful too. And also, it's amazing because for Social Sprout you can basically call them anytime, and they will personally help you with anything.
Right.
I don't know if you can do that with Hootsuite.
I doubt it. Yeah. I have used Hootsuite as well. It sounds like a similar tool, right? So there's a lot of these out there. I'd hate to be in this game. It's so competitive.
It is. They're both pretty similar.
Yeah. Cool. So for email marketing, I recommend these two. There's Stacks, actually, in this one, Emma. So I can find it. Email. That's one of the dangers of using a really generic term for your brand. Email marketing. Cool. So those three. MailChimp is probably the most popular, and it has, I think, the most generous free tier. You can manage up to 2,000 subscribers. Really powerful. They give you pretty powerful tools as part of your email marketing suite without you having to pay for it right up front. Once you go a bit higher in terms of like the volume or the way that you're managing your subscriber base, so generally part of most content strategy for most publishers will have a subscriber base somewhere along the funnel between, if they've got like a paid tier, or if they don't have a paid tier, it might actually be the end of the line for their actual funnel. So they might be trying to build loyalty around an audience, and then the final conversion point is a subscriber. Either way, most media startups will have an email distribution component at the core of how they manage their content, and you can do that with MailChimp pretty easily. I find as soon as you get a bit higher in terms of volume, something a bit more like Campaign Monitor works pretty well. I like these guys because they're Aussie, but also they have, just more enterprise style email marketing features and a more enterprise approach. There's also another one called SendGrid, which we use to do all of our email distribution of content newsletters and that sort of thing. But it's more dev focused, and then there's Emma as well, and that's pretty similar to MailChimp actually. I can't talk too much about Emma apart from the fact that they're quite large. There's some media outlets, some that I follow, that basically I only ever interact with via their email newsletter. Like, is that the case for you guys, or do you guys even read email newsletters anymore? No? Some of you?
It says 50% off on the topic.
50% off this awesome news story. So mainly for e-commerce. So it's interesting, like there is a category of news consumers for which email is like the #1 channel. So I'll show you a online startup called Crikey. It's part of a bigger media company, and when I spoke to the managing editor of this, and basically he said that their entire business is an email list, pretty much in the whole thing, and they manage their email distribution at I think it's a 1 p.m. distribution time, at almost like it's a production schedule for a newspaper. It's that important. The primary reason for that is because they've got an older demographic, They've got professionals who are between 40 and sort of 65 who read this paper, and it's profitable. It's not quite profitable. It makes money. It's not taking over the world, and all of that is driven by that one key distribution channel, which is pretty substantial. So it's definitely worth thinking about in the context of your content strategy, like where your email distribution sits. Another really popular one, the reason it works for them is obviously because these are all Australian examples. I'm sure you'll be able to find other ones. The reason it works for them is because of the nature of that content consumption. You know, most of those people are at work. It's a really good time. They're usually on their lunch break, so they deliver it at that time for them to consume. And then they have top and tail other email newsletters. Another really good one is Espresso by The Economist. If you've ever seen that, that's a good strategy. There's another one called At the End of the Day, which is the Vox.com email newsletter, where they do short wrap-ups of every story at the end of the day in like a couple of sentences. That's their way that they do the strategy. They don't go for the early morning release. They go for basically the late night one. So whatever the strategy is, basically you're just trying to deliver your content to the inbox in as relevant a fashion as possible. The Mamma Mia one is really popular as well and drives a lot of traffic for them, although that's a balance between all of their social activity and email marketing. So I'd encourage you to think about where email sits for your specific idea. Cool, so these next ones, I've talked about Medium a bit before. They're actually launching a monetization channel as well, so they have a large audience now and you can actually apply to be part of their monetization model. So you can create a publication on Medium. They give you all the tools, they can run it on an actual website, so it's pretty unique. Their platform is actually really powerful in terms of publishing, and also they're launching this revenue share arrangement with content creators around engagement. So they seem to be having a crack at it. So there are some pretty well-known publications who only publish on Medium. Next is another distribution mechanism which you guys have probably heard of or definitely used. Facebook Instant Articles. Have any of you ever played around with this? So you've definitely consumed content via Instant Articles, I'm assuming. Yeah? And you know that, you've experienced the difference. So they basically created it as a way to encourage more content creators onto the platform, which it did do, but it wasn't that effective in monetizing that content. But it's more of a distribution strategy. You're trying to build an audience as opposed to monetization. Anyone can sign up for it. You just distribute your content there via an RSS feed, and then you have to go into the Facebook Instant Articles platform as part of Facebook and then do your actual distribution of your content. But I encourage you to try it out. It's free. You may as well. As part of, say, if you're running a Facebook page as part of your startup, just have a go at some of the content. Like when you've created some content as part of your assessment, just go on and distribute some of them through here just to try out and get the experience of it.
Also for the fan pages in Facebook, Social Baker is really useful and it's free.
What's that?
Social Baker. It allows you to compare fan pages and other accounts on social media, and it's free.
Yeah, right. Nice.
So you can compare like the content, how low you are. I don't know, if you're selling cookies, you can also follow other fan pages for cookies, and you can see where you are at the top of the list.
Yeah, okay.
You are at the top.
Did you use this as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
It's quite useful.
very cool. The next one I'll show you is Google AMP pages. So, have you guys heard of this before? Accelerated, or it's called AMP pages, but basically it stands for Accelerated Mobile Pages. This came out as a convention. Google released this roughly at the same time as Facebook Instant Articles, or maybe a bit earlier. A consortium of media companies basically went to Google and said, how can we work with you more effectively to get our content to the world? And Google responded, and also part of that was like, make a bit more money. And Google responded with this protocol. So basically what it is it's unlike Facebook Instant Articles, which are specific to Facebook as a platform. AMP Pages is a mechanism for coding and structuring content that makes it more effective for mobile devices, improves the user experience. You can get there's like a range of different plugins for WordPress. You can just click and install, and it will automatically enable this for you. What it actually does is it means that when a user lands on any of your content on a mobile device, I'll show you Google News, which we'll talk about next, on a mobile device, it will detect that mobile device and then use that specific technology that they've developed. Sorry, I've just turned that off. For the remote guys, just go to Google News and on your phone, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Content that basically comes up with a little icon saying accelerated mobile page for this piece of content. I'm looking for it on my phone. Alright, you guys can have a look for it. If you basically do a Google search, you'll be able to see it. The reason why it's important is because it was sort of unsaid, but Google basically said this is one component of SEO performance. So if you have this enabled for your content, it has a better user experience, and Google have said explicitly that content that has a better user experience will be ranked higher than other content. So it's just one of the pieces of the puzzle in terms of getting people to discover your content and have it, appear higher in either search or in aggregation platforms like Google News. So if you're using WordPress, just go and enable one of those plugins. If you're using Ghost, it's actually part of the platform. If you're using Cognitives, our platform, it's part of it. I don't know about Medium. You probably just have to do a bit of research, and other platforms. Google News is a great distribution mechanism for media outlets, but you can't get access to it if you you can't distribute content there if you're just starting out. It's sort of harder to get your content in there. There's an application process you have to go through, but it's one of the bigger aggregators, so it's really valuable once you get in there. We applied to get in there and got rejected a couple of times because they try to kind of keep the number of media publications in there to a manageable number. And then the other one which I really like is Apple News. Oh, that's the Apple News app. Oh yeah, it's on iTunes. They do subscriptions through here, so there is a monetization or revenue opportunity if you're distributing your content into the Apple News app. I'm going to go there. I'll just talk about it. But it takes a bit of work to get your content in there, and there's an approval process. But it's a pretty widely used, if you remember back to week 2, so in this market anyway, it's a pretty widely used app for news consumption. So it's worth your time if you're actually going down that public interest news kind of path to try and get your content in there. Because basically it comes pre-loaded on every every Apple device, every Apple mobile device. Cool. Alright, advertising. Start again. Before I move on, there usually aren't questions. Any questions?
I don't know how exactly work if you were mentioning the AMP or those examples. But you said Cognitives has that feature, or
Yeah. How does it work? Yeah, that's a good question. I'll show you. Basically, I'll show you the documentation. It's probably the easiest way. Essentially, when you're coding up the different pages where your content is being published to, one of the things that we do in the back end, like just automatically, is add specific tags around that you see here, around AMP pages, so that a browser hits it, and basically the page, that it then recognizes that that specific code is in the page around that news content or content, whatever it is, and then it will say, all right, there's an AMP page of this piece of content available, and it will take the user to that AMP page automatically, and then that page will load typically 10 times faster than the other one if it's on a mobile device. Now there are basically there's a trade-off when you do that. It means that you can't do as much stuff on the page, which is probably good because most of the time if you're on a mobile device you don't want flashy graphics or like crazy interactive things or a massive video playback kind of gallery or something. You just want text, a couple of images, and you can load ads in there, so it can still serve ads as part of the Google suite. So that's what. So it's not like you don't do anything as a content author. You don't do anything different. Yeah, it's just like you press the button, it's on, and then when your users land there and they're on a mobile device, they'll get served that if they can. Similar to the way instant articles works. Like you don't get a choice. You just, if it's enabled, it just takes you there. Cool. So I'll show you. Double click DFP. Double click for publishers. So one of the biggest areas of the Google business is their advertising platform. They offer a free platform for publishers to distribute advertising within. So you can set up ad units, you can set up an account, you can start generating revenue not for free, they take a cut, but they don't charge you for it, from the Google platform. And essentially they will let you sell advertising through their marketplace. So this is what it looks like. Google Ad Exchange. So this is an old site that I set up. The reason why this is substantial is you start building an audience. Say as a media startup, you start building an audience. You're like, right, I've got 100,000 monthly uniques potentially, and that's probably the threshold where you can start selling advertising. So up to that point. The next question, say you might talk to some brands or some business owners or some people who want to talk to your audience. The next question is, well, physically, how do I actually do that? How do I take ad creative from a business, get it onto my website in a reliable fashion? How do I measure how many people I've served that ad to? And how do I report back to the customer that that ad was shown to my audience of 100,000 people 5 times in that month? That process is called ad trafficking. It's very basic. Basically, how you flight advertising campaigns. Flight being, get them up, track the number of impressions or the number of times people have seen them, how effective they were. Give your advertisers reporting around clicks, so how many people click through. Really kind of basic advertising metrics. All of that is basically encompassed within the DFP or Double Click for Publishers platform from Google. They then plug you into an advertising exchange. It says, all right, when you're not selling specifically to customers of your own, so you might go out and say for your idea around restaurants, you might go out and find advertisers, say in the liquor business, say in the wine business, because they might want to target fine diners, people who dine out all the time, because they know that they drink more wine. You've found an advertiser and you sell, a bunch of advertising to them, and that might take up, say, 50% of all of the inventory, the number of people that you have in your audience for that month. What Google then says is, right, for the other 50%, you can then sell that into our advertising exchange. And Google basically will go and find people for you to monetize your audience within. So they'll basically, find people. find advertisers for you to sell to your audience. The problem with that is just you don't make as much money. You make more money if you sell direct, what's called direct, and you sell, go and broker the deal yourself and say, hey, I've got this premium publishing platform, I've got this great audience, you want to talk to them, here I can create a nice ad for you, which you created in Canva or Sketch or something like that. Here's a proposal. All right, great. Give me the money. I'll go and flight it for you using Google DFP, and I'll give you a great report at the end of it. So that's where it sits in your kind of workflow as a publisher. So I'll just show you this as an example. So this is a campaign that I ran into a website, and I can see, all right, it got 30,000 impressions over the period of time that it was running, and that reached 100% of its goal. So you'd probably start a campaign and say, look, I've told this person I'll get 200,000 impressions over the period of the campaign, and then you'll be able to measure against, all right, to what percentage did I over-deliver or under-deliver for that campaign. The actual raw number, how many clicks, what was the click-through rate, and then what was I targeting, so which ad units. So in your publishing venture, you might have your homepage in different sections. Pardon me. So say it's the New York Times, they might have politics and sport. So some of their advertising people might have sold specific ad units within the sports section because there might be a beer brand that wants to advertising sport. So they'd use Google DFP to specifically target only that section and not the whole thing. Whereas this ad was running through the whole network. If I give you I might use that example, New York Times. I'll give you a sense of what I'm actually talking about. You can download this thing called the Google Publisher Toolbar if you're interested in learning a bit more about how this advertising stuff works. I'll just turn on ad overlays and then refresh the page. This should give me an overlay on these ad units. Hopefully it will. There we go. All right, so the New York Times are using the Google's DoubleClick for Publishers to serve this ad here. So you can see it says the ad unit ID, the publisher is NYT, New York Times, and it's on the homepage. And so in their version of DoubleClick for Publishers, that would come up as a line item here, saying, it's targeting this specific ad unit, and the name of the campaign would be, that's an in-house campaign, there's the creative ID around trying to get more subscribers. And this one, homepage, but only in the US, so they're targeting that. Some other ad units down here. Maybe not. There we go. I might need to refresh it to do it with those, so I'll be able to see it with those as well. So if you download that Chrome plugin, it's pretty interesting because then you can go and see, all right, how are other publishers running their advertising strategy. So let's try it for Vox.com. There you go. I guarantee that headline was written in the context of search weight. 9 winners and 10 losers from Game of Thrones Season 7 finale. The other good thing is you can actually see ad unit sizes as well, and the strategy that different publishers are putting in terms of the kinds of ad units that they generate more or less revenue from in different locations throughout their designs. So it gives you an understanding, all right, well, when I'm producing content, when I'm figuring out how I should lay out my page using, say, WordPress, because you can get templates that have ad unit slots in them, which ones should I try and get? Because you can then go and create those within Google DFP and just literally chuck them in the plugins that you can get in WordPress. Sorry, that's taking quite a while to load. going to work? Maybe not. All right. They use a thing called Rubicon, which is it's a supply side platform. I'll talk about that in a second. Now on the other side of DoubleClick for publishers is AdSense. This is a more generic version of DoubleClick for publishers. It's actually just for people who have websites and you want to create some ads for it. So it's a bit simpler to use. It's not specifically for where you might be trafficking ads and have to report back to a customer. It might be if you've got a website and you want to just put some ads on it, then you can use this platform. Again, it's doesn't cost you. They don't charge you to use it. It still costs you to use it because they take a cut of all of your advertising. But you can then go and create, ad units, and it's a bit easier to get your head around in this one. So, I'm going to create a new ad unit. I can then say, all right, I just want a generic display ad, or might want something that's in feed and more like a native ad, or in article ads. And then you can basically just go and create those for your actual website. Something that looks like that. Style it, match it to your website, and get the code. You can then take that as a code and drop it into, there's an implementation guide you can read here if you want to get into it. If you've got technical people working with you, you usually get them to do it. If you're working with WordPress, there's specific plugins you can use, and basically they'll give you the box, and it'll say you copy it from there and you'll just put it in the box and then it'll appear on your website. Just the easiest way to do it. Cool. So the next step up from that, so a lot of people don't make very much money from something like AdSense. Like it's very unlikely you'd make a lot of money from that, because torrent sites use that, for example, to make their money. Millions and millions of users, and it's all generic traffic. So you generally wouldn't make that much money from just plugging them in and just hoping for the best. You'd use that tool and then go and sell direct, as I was saying before, to actually that's the way you would actually make money to survive. Another way that you do that as a publisher is to work with what's called a supply side platform. So Rubicon is one. I've partnered with these guys with a publishing client before. So basically you get to a point where you've got enough inventory and you're saying, well, how can I get my publishing premium content website vetted to advertisers more effectively without having to sell everything direct? And then you partner with someone like Rubicon. There's another one called Pubmatic. And they basically say, right, we've put together a network of websites that have more premium content on there, which basically means, not crappy gambling sites and not pornography and a bunch of other stuff. They've got like brand guidelines that say these websites are good and they have premium content. And then they take those baskets of websites to advertisers and sell them on your behalf. So it's a way to increase the amount of money you get from advertising. Cool. Now, I already talked about AdWords, but I won't do that anymore. There's another one called, another emerging network of advertising and revenue partners that's based on content. So Outbrain, and this one, Plister. There's a bunch of low rent ones. Some of these are still pretty low rent, but I'll talk about them anyway. Essentially what this is for media companies, is if I go to the Aegis site, you'll be able to see it live. Let's go into this site. Sorry, this is taking a while. Actually, I might show you that while we're here, while we're waiting for these really slow websites to load. Recommended, there you go. So these units here it's another way to generate revenue. Basically what they say is that you can add this element of code onto your website. If you've got a partnership with them, they'll actually do that for you. They've got technical people to do it for you. So if you want to talk to them, I'd recommend, just having a chat to them about your ideas. basically they'll say, all right, you can put your content in there, and they've got recommendation engines about people's behavior. And then, so those are the top ones, like, different things from their network. Huffington Post, because I think the Fairfax has a partnership with them. Then down here they've got from the web, and that's a paid component. So they'll get paid for every click or for every click through they get from those, or impressions, depending on the kind of arrangement they've got. So advertisers will basically create content and push it into those networks, and then it appears on publishing websites as another ad. But it sort of appears like it's not an ad. So UNHCR, for example, and then cruise companies, etc. ComSec is another one. And that's through Plista. So these guys. I've implemented, you've got to be careful with these, because we implemented one on Fans Unite about a year ago, and the content that came through was really, really bad, like borderline pornography. So we had to turn it off. So you just got to be really careful. But these ones are generally okay. The content's probably not great, but it's not going to hurt you. Outbrain's probably better. This one's probably the biggest for embedding content in your website. In the go-to-market sessions, I'll talk about actually using these platforms as a marketer as well, so you can push content into these platforms. It's a bit expensive, but depending on your business model, it does actually work sometimes. But they're very handy for advertisers for a range of reasons. One of the other reasons is because ad blockers it's a bit harder for ad blockers to block these things out. So generally you're going to make a bit more money off these than you might from standard display ad units. Cool. All right. I'm slightly running out of time, I think, so I've got to smash through these ones. All right, so subscriptions. Just as a show of hands, who would be thinking about having subscriptions as part of their revenue model in their business idea? No one? Yeah, maybe? All right, cool. So before I go off that, GT Metrics. This is a really handy free tool. If you want to test your website and its performance, use this. If you don't know why it's really slow, put it into this tool, and it will tell you why it's really, really slow, and then you'll be able to fix it. So if you're doing Piano, TinyPass, if you're doing subscriptions and you want to put a paywall in, this is probably the best paywall slash subscription engine that's Piano. That's a bit, that one, TinyPass by Piano. It's piano.io. They have big enterprise tools, but then they also have like a WordPress plugin called TinyPass that does work really well as well. If you want to create social leaky paywalls, if you want to create like a subscription model around your content, then these guys are probably the best out there. There's a range of other tools within WordPress that you can find. I'd recommend checking them out. If you want to go a bit more manual, there's something like Stripe. You can just sign up to Stripe for free. If you can get onto the phone to a potential subscriber and they can just give you your credit card, you can sign up for Stripe, start charging them, and you don't even have to do any development work. So that's really handy. It's unlikely you'll be able to do that. You probably have to do a bit of development work to use something like Stripe. If you're in that position, this is the best platform in terms of ease of use and fees for recurring charges. If you want something that's a bit easy to use but costs, like you don't make as much money, something like Chargify or Recurly, they're probably the two biggest ones. Chargify and Recurly. They are used by SaaS like software businesses, but they are like, any subscription-based business can use a product like this. And then it will manage all of your charges to your different customers, the sequencing, invoicing, all of that sort of stuff. So if you've got, a monthly membership or monthly access for content, then you can do all of that via these platforms. Cool. I'll keep going on that did you have any specific questions on that? Cool. E-commerce. if you think about doing e-commerce, these are the two, as part of your media startup, these are the two biggest consumer level platforms. BigCommerce is started by an Aussie guy called Mitch Harper. Shopify is an American company, so I'll give you an example of a client we actually did this for. I think I might have shown it to you in a previous lecture. This is like a media website, but they've got a shop, so basically all I did was say, alright, we'll just chuck the shop into the nav, and that bounces out to a Shopify store. Super cheap, really easy to implement, and they can just sell all their stuff through it. It took about a day to set up. And it was about, I think it's about 29, or we can find the prices, maybe they've gone up. Yeah, 29 a month. So super cheap, and then they take a cut of your sales. Sorry, I realised I haven't plugged my computer in. BigCommerce is basically the same. They've all got out-of-the-box templates you can use. Some of them are free, some of them you have to pay for. But it's basically a plug-and-play e-commerce solution. There we go. There is a Magento is like an enterprise level one, which you guys, once you graduate up from these, you'd need to then go into something like Magento if you're running a proper full-on e-commerce platform. And then there's Stack Commerce, which I showed you guys in week 2, which is a plug-and-play e-commerce solution for publishers. So if you want to monetize specific products within your publishing venture, but you don't want to run it, so if you don't want to actually manage the products, then you can use something like this. Sort of like the ad networks, but for e-commerce. Cool. Now, analytics. Analytics is really important. If you're not using Google Analytics, you should be. How many of you guys have used it before? A couple? All right, cool. It's not that great for content, but it does work. And there's a range of different dashboards you can enable just to make it a bit easier to understand, which I'll show you here. So it's free to sign up to, and they're constantly improving it, which is nice. I'll show you our dashboard for our marketing site. So this is what it looks like. I recommend just enabling it. Again, if you're using any of the publishing platforms I showed you, there's a plug-and-play solution to get it up and running. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to get it up, because it's so easy to set up. If you're having trouble and you want to ask me a question about it, I'm happy to help. Just hit me up on Slack. If you go into customization, you can actually load in like dashboards. There's like a dashboard explorer from galleries, so you can import them from different galleries. Waiting. Where people have basically created out-of-the-box starter, dashboards for you. So just search for content or publishing, and you'll be able to find some in there. I won't dwell on that because it'll take a while. If you want to go a bit deeper, so that's the sample dashboard we put together. If you want to go a bit deeper on publishing metrics, there's a platform called Chartbeat. This is specifically for publishers to give you an understanding of, right, are you creating an audience, how engaged is that audience, and what are they doing with your content? So pretty powerful stuff. It's not free. We've got a lot of the features in our product, so if you're interested in using Chartbeat, I'd suggest you take me up on my offer to use our product for free. Once you start getting into, there's a couple in that list there, which I won't go into. Once you start getting into, say, subscriptions around your subscribers, I'd recommend something like Baremetrics, which is specifically for subscriptions. So if you're running a subscription business model, you get insights around, how likely are your specific subscribers to churn? Are they actually utilizing your service? Are they going and checking out your content? That sort of stuff. If you want, this sort of goes between the content and also the reporting side of things. Tableau is Tableau Public. This is there's an enterprise version of this, and then there's an open source version of this called Tableau Public. If you're interested in data, this is the product for you. Lots of journalists and academics use it to publish data visualizations and that sort of stuff. And you can go and they've got an amazing gallery of really cool ways that people who work with data are using this tool in the context of publishing. I used it for both creating content in the context of, say, sports, stats and stuff, but then also for reporting back on how people are engaging with my content as well. And then there's a range of ones in there which I won't go into now, but you can check them out a bit later. Cool. All right. So that's revenue. What I might do, I'll pull out a bunch of these key marketing and sales ones. They're probably the three. There's a big list of marketing and sales tools here that you can explore on your own. I'll talk about these three because they're probably the most powerful ones that I use all the time. And then maybe this one, which isn't on the list. Drift, which is also free. Cool. This is basically a really, really good way to save time if you've used If This Then That. Have you guys heard of If That platform? Maybe. It's basically if you can try and connect every app that you use as part of your business together, you can use an app like this or product like this. So when you publish content, you can use this tool to distribute that content to a Slack channel and all of your social media accounts. Or if someone retweets your content, you can use this to integrate that into an email newsletter that goes out to all of your staff or whatever it is. It literally connects any app to any other app. So every time this is how I use it, every time I find myself doing something repetitive, I'll generally jump into this product and try and automate it, or parts of it, so that I don't have to do that repetitive task anymore. So it's super helpful. I'd really recommend you check it out. Autopilot is in that email marketing kind of space, but this is really good for drip email marketing campaigns. So if someone signs up for your startup, like basically to subscribe to your content startup, or if they inquire, or if they do a free trial or something like that, depending on whatever your business model is, you can use a tool like this to automate a flow of communication to that user. And you can get pretty complicated about the flows that you put together. So you can send them SMSs, you can send them emails, you can put delays in, you can do a range of different things. And it's pretty cheap. For landing pages, if you guys need to test out ideas, so some of the MVPs we've built as part of our startup have just been a series of landing pages, I'd recommend using Unbounce because it gives you an understanding of, right, how many people have landed on this page, consumed the content that's on there, and then how many people have signed up or given me their email address. And it's really easy to do, and they've got really good templates, so you can just sort of drag and drop it around. It's not free, but it's not crazily expensive. If you're looking for free landing page builders, there are others out there, but they're not as good as this one in terms of analytics. And then this is sort of a new thing that I've used, but they have quite a powerful free tier, so it's pretty good for you guys to hear about. I'm assuming you guys have used these little chat icons on different businesses and brand websites in the past, yeah? So this is one of them, of which there's many. The reason why I like this one is because they've got some cool tools that you can implement, like automatic responses. There's got a bit of AI kind of chatbot stuff in there that works pretty well. And you can just sign up and try it out. It's pretty easy to get on your website as well. So for anyone, if you're trying to get feedback and responses from customers and you're happy to have that on your website, you probably should have it on your website because then people can just chat to you and it goes straight to your phone. Cool. All right, and the last one. Generally, you're going to have to be organizing yourself. So here's a range of recommendations for ways to organize yourself. If you're not using Trello, I recommend using Trello. How many of you guys have heard of Trello? No? Some? One or two? Basically, it's like a Kanban board where you can just drag and drop things that are in progress. Some people use it to plan their content. Whoops. We use it to plan content, but then we have different boards for different things like big to-do lists, team tasks. You can automate things from Zapier into Trello, so you can, if you need to respond to specific emails in your email, you can sync to a task in Trello if you want. For work applications, all that sort of stuff, you guys already use Google, the Google Suite. I recommend using that. If you're looking for like a task project management tool, I recommend Asana because it's free. Well, there's a free version, and it's also was started by one of the guys who started Facebook. It's a very relaxing piece of software to use because they're all about mindfulness and meditation and a bunch of other stuff. So it's quite nice. Yeah, if you're doing a lot of work with a bunch of people, get it into something like this, and then you'll actually get it done, as opposed to just having it in a shitload of emails that never get done. If you're looking for things that are more, that's more sort of developer focused or technical, then move into the suite, into the Atlassian suite, which is Jira and Confluence are the main ones. Basically task tracking for developers and technical people, along with content collaboration tools. There are free versions of this as well, and there's a trial you can do. You can check it out. And then the last one, which I'll show you, is Xero. Just there, CapShare is really good if you're starting a startup and you've got shares that you need to track. So it's not relevant for you guys right now because you're not incorporating. But say you wanted to continue down the path of your startup, and you needed to track, all right, who owns what component of the company, you could use something like CapShare to say, all right, well, Tom owns 20% and Bill owns 5% and so-and-so as an investor owns 20%. That all basically will go into a CapShare management platform so they can check on it. And the last one being Xero. You're going to need to do your accounts and all that sort of stuff once you start taking people's money. Pay your taxes, all the rest of it, pay your staff. Use something like this to do it. Use Xero, Mild, whatever. We use Xero. It's really effective. All right, that concludes the insane roundup of tools and stuff. So for your MVP and your assessment, if you have a problem that you're trying to solve and you need to use a tool for it, now's your chance to ask me, is there something that I could be using to achieve that task? If there isn't, I'll assume you guys are all good. All right, cool. I might stop the recording.